everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So this one is going to be quick. This one is going to be very quick. City Board of Elections. City Board of Elections admits it broke the law, except reforms. You don't say. You don't say. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you remember, during the primaries in Bernie Sanders' hometown of Brooklyn, they got rid of 100,000 people off the voter rolls. That was immensely mysterious. And it turns out that was immensely illegal. That was illegal. Now, granted, we already knew it was illegal. I'm talking about what they themselves are admitting. Okay, we broke state and federal law when we got rid of these 117,000 voters off the rolls. Our bad. Our bad. We'll accept reforms. I have a separate question. Is accepting reforms enough? How do you make sure that this never happens again? Now, a New York cop can stop you with a joint in your pocket and lock you up for having that joint in your pocket. I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing. Can I now walk away without any consequences whatsoever from the law in this case? If they're admitting that they broke state and federal law, is there no consequence for the state and federal law that they broke? Meaning there's nobody that goes to jail for this. Nobody gets locked up and put in a cage. It's perfectly okay for them to do the exact same thing again because, hey, there's no consequence. Our bad. We threw 100,000 people off the rolls. Our bad. Our bad. That's our bad. Sorry about that. We won't do that again. Our bad. Trust us. We won't do that again. I don't understand how no one goes to jail. You're telling me that you broke state and federal law, and yet nobody goes to jail. Is nobody going to bring charges from the state and federal agencies that's responsible for bringing charges when somebody throws 117,000 people off the voter rolls? Between somebody getting caught with a joint and between somebody who's rigging the voting system, I think the person who's rigging the voter system is more important. I think that's the difference between Hillary Clinton winning New York and Bernie Sanders winning New York. I think that's a big fucking deal. That is a massive fucking deal. 117,000 got thrown off the voter rolls, and then they're saying they broke state and federal law. Who did it? Who did it? Who's the person? Who's the person? Are you telling me there are no charges that's brought up on this case? I'm finding this to be amazing. If you're telling me you broke state and federal law, but it's an hour bad, and we promised to change stuff. We promised to change some marginal stuff. And then you walk away. That just don't seem right. That don't seem right. I don't give a shit if you're admitting it. Who's making sure that the person who did it was punished? Who? They just admit it and just walk away? I don't understand. Who else commits a crime and then just walks away and tells the cops, my bad. My bad. I'm sorry. I wouldn't do it again. My bad. My bad. But apparently New York can do that. The New York City Board of Elections is admitting that it broke the state and federal law when it improperly removed voters from the state rolls ahead of the presidential primary last spring, including more than 117,000 voters in Brooklyn. Hey, guess who was born in Brooklyn? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. Guess, they threw these people right off the rolls just before the Brooklyn. Bernie Sanders had thousands of people come to that rally in New York. It's very possible Bernie Sanders was going to win New York. They threw 117,000 people off the rolls. And we're supposed to believe that this is completely coincidental, that it just so happened to be Brooklyn where they purged all of these voters. Yeah, I'm a little bit more cynical than that. That's according to a draft consent decree announced Tuesday, nearly a year after the board was sued in federal court for violating the National Voter Registration Act and state election law. I don't understand how nobody goes to prison for this. That's all. The Brooklyn voter purge was first reported in NYC just days before last spring's primary election. Well, yeah, you reported it because you're saying, hey, they're throwing all these people off the rolls in Bernie's hometown. What the fuck is this? As part of the settlement, the board agreed to a series of remedial measures that will be in place at least through next presidential election, November 2020, pending court approval. The deal restores the rights of improperly purged voters and establishes a comprehensive plan to prevent illegal voter purges in future elections. Fuck that. Fuck that. Donald Trump is president of the United States. Part of the reason that Donald Trump got into that office was because of the shenanigans that was taking place in regards to our voting system. Nothing to do with Russia. So don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about the way Republicans game those voting systems, but I'm making the point that Democrats do the exact same thing. Democrats have no carte blanche argument to this idea that, oh, Republicans was cheating us. They were shaving people off the voter rolls, and that's how we got Donald Trump. That may be true. But it's also true that you were shaving people off the voter rolls when it came to Bernie Sanders. That's the reality of the situation. Don't tell me that, hey, in 4 years, we'll put these people back on the voter rolls. I mean, we'll put ththese people back on the voter rolls. We're sorry for Purge, and we shouldn't have did it. Our bad. They'll be back on the voter rolls. I don't give a shit about 2020. I'm talking about 2016 right now. Who purged them? Why were they purged? And if it was illegal through state and federal law, shouldn't those people be prosecuted in state and federal court? Don't tell me that it's illegal and then say there's no consequence for it being illegal. That's my point. The lawsuit was originally filed November 2016 by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under the law, Latino Justice, I can't pronounce the last name, on behalf of Common Cause New York and several plaintiffs. In early 2017, both the Justice Department and New York State Attorney General's office made motions to join the lawsuit. The suit was commenced because there were real problems, said Ezra Rosenberg, with the Lawyers Committee of Civil Rights under the law. People were being kicked off the voter list even though they were eligible to vote in the city of New York. Is that not illegal? And if that's not illegal, I don't understand why they aren't going against it. This is one of those things where, if you're talking about partisan politics, if I was Donald Trump, I would have my Justice Department looking into this, saying they were rigging the vote, they were going against Bernie Sanders, we need to put these people in prison, we need to make sure this never happens again, etc., etc., etc. I would be harping on that purely from a political partisan standpoint, because I will be in my power to do so, and I will be absolutely right. And yes, I will put people in prison. I don't like putting people in prison. But you understand that your system was gamed and rigged. They threw 100,000 people off the rolls, and now they're saying, hey, okay. We'll put those people back on the rolls now that the election is finished, and we did what we needed to do. George Bush invaded the country, killed 1 million people. Obama came into office and said, we're going to look forward, we're not looking back. And he continued to use the weapons of war that Bush created and expanded those wars into 8. Donald Trump comes into office and uses the powers that were in the presidency through Obama and through Bush. When you let stuff persist, you create this kind of normal trend of things that there's a precedent set, and that precedent continuously be hit. You've allowed somebody, or some group, or some faction, or whatever you want to call it, to throw 117,000 eligible voters off the voter rolls. Now, if that's illegal, and I would argue it is a big fucking deal, you choose your if this is a representative government, you're choosing your leaders. It is not a representative government if you're decapitating the voting system that's responsible for you choosing those leaders. They cheated. That's what I'm getting at. At the very least, if you want to say, well, Jamal, you can't really call it cheating because you can't prove there was a quid pro quo, fine. The organization itself said they broke federal and state law. Should there be a consequence for them breaking federal and state law, particularly whenever it was involved dealing with people's right to vote? I don't think the person's right to vote is a trivial thing. I think it's a big fucking deal. And if you're disenfranchised 117,000 people, that is a lot of people to disenfranchise, particularly when the goal of this is potentially to change the way the vote is going to take place. These guys are partisan hacks. Stop acting as if they're functionaries. If you're a Democrat and you want your particular candidate to exceed the office, what do you do if you want that candidate to exceed the office? And if you believe that Hillary Clinton is the best candidate for that, she's inevitable, she's this, she's that, if you believe that she's a better candidate, Bernie Sanders, do you act in ways that say, fuck my integrity, I want the person who I want to be in that office. I can live with my shame later. I am a democratic functionary. There should be a consequence. That's what I'm saying. There should be a consequence to make sure that this never happens again. I don't care about the petty shit that you're talking about. I'm talking about there should be a legal consequence, be it federal or state court, and the people who are responsible should be thrown in prison. That's what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. And I hate this idea of locking people up. But I hate this idea more of the system being gamed in this way when we're trying to vote. Until you get this thing of voting nailed down, nothing takes place anywhere else. And the idea that somebody, some group, some faction, whoever, can throw 100,000 people off the rolls is mind-blowing. The idea that that allowed to fly is even more mind-blowing. This idea of saying, okay, we'll do some piddly-anty stuff around the edges. It's not enough. It's not enough. A consent decree requires the board to submit a plan on how it manages its voter rolls within 90 days. I don't care. I care about what took place in the last election. I care that there's no consequence for what took place in the last election. I don't believe you that it was a data fuck up. I don't believe this purge seems specific to me. I would have to be insane to believe that it was randomly just so happened in Brooklyn. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. So, at the very least, if you're telling me it's against the law, even if you can't say, hey, they did it for a quid pro quo, at the very least, you've just told me it was illegal. And is there a consequence for illegal action in state and federal law? And if I myself am caught with a joint by being profiled by some cop in New York and just stopped randomly, willy-nilly, patent searched, I'm going to jail. Why is the election board able to break the law flagrantly and there's no legal consequence? That's my question. That's my question. I understand you're trying to take minor steps now. Okay, good. I'm talking about 2016. I'm talking about 2016. And I'm talking about, this is what I would bet. If you put somebody in prison, if you put a group of people in prison, be it for state or federal charges, I can almost guarantee you that this shit wouldn't happen in 2020. That's what I can almost guarantee you. So I will leave it at that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I leave it at that. You need to deal with corruption in your government. At all levels of your government, state or federal, you need to deal with corruption, meaning you need to start putting people in prison. You need to have one lawsuit after the next on the head of one politician after the next. You need to scare the shit out of them to understand that they can go to prison and they can be locked up. Same thing for Wall Street. Same thing for this idea of bribery of politicians and everything else. You need a pit bull in those offices who's willing to go after these guys and put these guys in prison when they fuck up. You've just admitted to me that it was illegal for what they did, but at the same token, there is no legal consequence for what they did. We'll accept changes, even though we may have actually changed what took place in the last election for New York by throwing 117,000 people off the goddamn voter rolls. As if voting is this perfunctory thing that doesn't really matter. Oh, it's just a vote. You're just choosing who you want to run your goddamn country. It's a big fucking deal. It is a big fucking deal. I don't take this lightly. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. I just don't take this lightly. That's all. That's all. All right. I'm not going to stay too long on this one since I was pretty long on the other two. All right, guys. I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.